All right, let's begin. Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for joining us online today for the first of a series of online events for this consultation on the draft Haringey Local Plan. My name is Tim Solomon. I'm the Policy, Conservation and Design Manager here at Haringey. I'm joined by my manager, Bryce Tudwell, who's the Head of Spatial Planning. Before we begin, I'd like to go over just a few quick housekeeping points on how this session will run. So first of all, this is a public event and we're really pleased that so many of you have joined us today to help shape the future of Haringey. You've all joined as attendees, which means your microphones and cameras are off by default. This helps us keep the session running smoothly. You can still post in the chat, and when we get to the Q&A sessions, be able to unmic some of you if you've got questions that you'd like to ask in person. So the format of this webinar will be a 30-minute presentation introducing you to the draft local plan and how to provide feedback on it, followed by around about 25 minutes for questions. As I mentioned, if you'd like to make a question, ask a question or make a comment, please feel free to use the Q&A function or the chat function, which you can see either on the right hand of your screen or in the top left-hand corner of your screen. For this session, we'd really appreciate it if you could focus your questions on the kind of basic kind of what, why, and how of the local plan. We've got a lot of topics and neighbourhood-specific webinars that we've got planned over the next few weeks, which will provide an opportunity for you to ask some of those more specific or detailed questions on particular issues like, say, climate change or particular neighbourhoods or indeed sites. So we really want the session to be focused on the kind of overarching purpose and direction of the local plan, and for those people who just are a bit unfamiliar with what the local plan is and why it matters. So we'll be monitoring the chat throughout the session, and we'll respond in the Q&A session at the end. If we feel like your question would benefit from a live discussion, we might invite you to unmute. What will happen is we'll unmute you first, and then you'll have to unmute yourself and then turn on your camera to ask a question, only if you're comfortable doing so, of course. The session and future online sessions will be recorded so that others who aren't able to attend can watch them later. And if you find that we don't get to your question today, or you're unable to attend a future question or an in-person event, then please feel free to email us at haringey.gov.uk. All right, so the agenda today, I'll kind of talk to you really briefly through the what, why, and how of the draft local plan, the structure of the plan, the key elements, including our vision and our placemaking framework, the spatial strategy, before briefly going on to discuss the neighbourhood chapters, thematic chapters, and finally, how to have your say. So, what is the local plan? The local plan is the main document used to determine planning applications in Haringey. So these can range from applications to change a window in an area protected for its heritage values, to an extension to your home, changing a warehouse into a nightclub, or indeed a major application to build hundreds of new homes, infrastructure, and employment spaces, such as developments you may have seen in Haringey Heartlands or even at Tottenham Hale. The local plan sets out a long-term vision for new buildings and development. It contains a suite of planning policies which guide where different types of development are encouraged and supported, and indeed where they won't be. These policies also seek to ensure that what is proposed and ultimately built out is of high quality and is economically, environmentally, and socially sustainable. So last year, the council published a 10-year borough vision, setting out an ambition for Haringey to be a place that we can all belong and thrive in. The local plan is a key document in helping to achieve that vision by ensuring that we use and develop our land in an efficient way and in a way that addresses our needs and aspirations as a community. By setting a really clear and ambitious vision, the plan is also able, we hope the plan is also able to secure investment for the borough. Because the local plan covers a really wide range of topics, from climate change to parks and heritage, it also can help support a range of our council strategies, including the housing strategy, parks and open spaces strategy, transport strategy, and the climate change action plan. One of the most important documents the council produces, it's really essential that it's shaped by yourselves, our residents, communities, businesses, and other stakeholders. A few years ago, the council committed to working closely and collaboratively with our communities through an approach called the Haringey Deal. And this engagement is part of that commitment and is one we see as ongoing. Now, the current local plan was adopted back in 2017, and it's comprised of a number of documents. So those are, and you can see them on that diagram there, the Strategic Policies Development Plan document, or DPD, one that relates to development management policies, one that relates specifically to site allocations, and we've got a specific area action plan for the Tottenham area. There's also a area action plan that the council is working on for the Woodgreen area. The decision has been made to, that has yet to be adopted, but the decision has been made to wrap that area action plan into this new draft local plan. So alongside the local plan, it's really important to understand the relationship between it and the London plan. So the London plan sets out the strategic planning framework for all of Greater London. So this includes, for example, housing targets that each borough must meet. So a local plan like Haringey's must align with the local plan, but focus on how it achieves those targets and other priorities like transport, climate, or community needs, and how we can deliver that through more locally detailed and borough-specific policies. The local plan, the London plan, and another North London waste plan, which deals, as you'd imagine, primarily with waste, form what we call our development plan. And all decisions on planning applications must be made in accordance with the development plan, unless there are legally relevant, or what we call material considerations that justify a different decision. So legally relevant matters could be things like impacts on traffic, noise, or access to services, or indeed other consideration of other planning documents, as opposed to other legally irrelevant matters like just a personal dislike for a development or the loss of a private view. National planning policies and supplementary planning documents are examples of documents that are material considerations. And an example of a supplementary planning document is the South Tottenham Extensions Supplementary Planning Document, which enables extensions in that part of the borough. So why a new local plan? Well, firstly, there's a legal requirement for us to review the local plan every 5 years. As I mentioned, our existing documents date back to 2017, and a lot has changed since then. We've got new national policy and legislation. We have a new London plan that was adopted in 2021 and another one on its way. The council declared a climate emergency a few years back. We've got a housing crisis, and there's a growing focus as well on health and well-being that has emerged, particularly post pandemic. It's also an opportunity for us, an opportunity to deliver on the borough vision, and also to consolidate what is kind of a little bit of a confusing mix of 4/5 if you include the Woodgreen AAP documents, and try and consolidate that into one much easier to navigate document. It's a chance for us to work together with our communities through the Haringey Deal, and to leverage opportunities that the borough has going forward, like us becoming the London Borough of Culture in 2027 and hosting the Euros in 2028. It's also a chance for us to address our big challenges like homelessness or climate change. As I mentioned, we need to ensure that the local plan aligns with or is in general accordance with the London Plan. It's important to note that there is increasing pressure from regional and national governments to deliver more homes and provide for more growth. The government has set new more ambitious housing targets for London. And as I mentioned, the London Mayor is now working on a new London Plan, which will be adopted in 2027 and is likely to set higher housing targets for Haringey. So it's really important that we as a borough are really kind of positive and proactive in identifying opportunities for development in the borough that are nevertheless sustainable and aligned with our vision for the borough. If we don't have an up-to-date local plan, what happens is that we risk losing control over development that happens in the borough. So that means that decisions on planning applications could be made in accordance with national policies or the London Plan alone, which may not reflect our local priorities and potentially lead to things like less affordable housing or poorly located developments or missed opportunities to address the things that we kind of care about. So as you'd imagine, it takes quite a long time to produce something as large and as important as the local plan. The process is largely set out in legislation. For us at Haringey, we decided to embark on this process with a additional upfront engagement, which we called First Steps, and we undertook in the winter of 2020/2021. The idea of First Steps was really to reach out to the community and hear what our kind of needs and aspirations were, issues and challenges before we'd even started drafting a single word of the plan. And we're really pleased to say that we heard from a lot of you back then, and we're looking to hear from a lot more of you now. So now we're at the draft local plan stage, or what we refer to as Regulation 18 consultation. This is the first time that we're putting out a full draft of the local plan. So it's really a great time for you to kind of make your voice heard at a relatively early stage of the process developing the plan. This consultation will, of course, run till the 19th of December. After that, we will be looking through all the responses that you provide us with and using them to make changes to the local plan. We'll then come up with what's called a proposed submission version of the plan, which is the version that we intend to send through for examination. That consultation will likely occur in the spring, summer of 2026. And it is another big opportunity for you to have your say. Following that, we'll be submitting the plan for an examination in public. There is an independent inspector that will be appointed by the Secretary of State to oversee that examination. Not everyone will be asked to speak at the examination. The inspector will ask certain people who have provided responses to come and speak at the examination. And at the end, the inspector will make a recommendation on whether the plan will be adopted. It may be, or can be adopted rather, it may be that the inspector recommends some major modifications to the plan that's been proposed. If that's the case, there'll be an additional period of public consultation on those major modifications. And then finally, it will be up to the council to adopt the plan subject to the inspector's recommendations. And we're hoping that will occur in, that should be winter 2026/7 rather than 2026. So that's the process for the local plan. As I mentioned, we had a large engagement back in 2020/21. We had a lot of you respond, over 10,000 unique comments, over 1,005 of you responded. And we had a really great response rate from young people through working with schools and working with the Youth Advisory Board to reach out to their peers. And I'm pleased to say that as a result, that consultation was able to secure some national and regional awards. So how is the local plan structured? There's three kind of main parts to the local plan. The first is what we call kind of the placemaking for Haringey section, and it's the upfront section, which contains a spatial vision for Haringey, kind of the narrative of what we want to see the borough look like in 2042. It's also accompanied by a placemaking framework for Haringey, which sets out our kind of overarching objectives, priorities, and the approach for undertaking placemaking in Haringey. And then finally, a spatial strategy, which is kind of a mapped strategy for delivering on the local plan. There are two more chapters, the second of which is neighbourhood chapters. So we've got 11 different neighbourhoods, and I'll talk on them in a moment, as well as thematic chapters on various topics like housing, climate change, design, etc. So I won't go into the whole spatial vision, but there's a summary up here which I'll read out. So our vision for Haringey is that Haringey in 2042 is made up of places where everyone can belong and thrive. That development over the period from 2027 to 2042 has contributed to a fair, healthy, safe, resilient, and sustainable borough for current and future generations. And that this has importantly been achieved by working collaboratively with our diverse local communities and partners through our placemaking framework. So the placemaking framework is a really important part of the local plan. For the first time, we're defining what placemaking means for Haringey, and that's a response to feedback that we received as part of First Steps, that it was really important that rather than development being driven by growth, it needs to be really driven by a way of working together to deliver shared aspirations. And it was really that kind of ask from the community that led us to this particular definition of placemaking, and that's seeing placemaking as an ongoing process, not just an outcome, but a way of working. And that's a process that seeks to empower residents and stakeholders to shape places that enable everyone to reach their potential, to meet our diverse needs and ambitions, to deliver a fairer, healthier and greener Haringey, and to enhance and celebrate our unique environments, histories, cultures, communities and identities. So the placemaking framework is comprised of kind of three different elements. The first of which is our objectives, and a lot of these came through the First Steps engagement, that there were three kind of themes that really rang out throughout all the different elements of the topics that we consulted on. So those were that fairness was a really big issue and addressing inequalities within the borough. And so a fairer borough is one of our overarching objectives. The second is health, wellbeing and safety. That rang out really, really strongly in the consultation. And the final one was sustainability and resilience. And that's really in the context of the climate emergency that we declared, and also concerns around the biodiversity crisis as well. It also cuts across kind of being a socially and economically resilient borough too. So those overarching objectives are accompanied by 6 more Haringey specific kind of priorities, which really leverage on kind of our strengths and our challenges that we seek to leverage or address. So those include homes of the future, delivering those kind of genuinely affordable homes that we need, leveraging the fact that a lot of our borough is very well connected, but there still improvements need to be made, particularly in walking and cycling. But it's not just about the kind of transport, it's about access to the services that will enable people to reach their kind of potential. Living Well deals largely with kind of that social kind of infrastructure side of things. Cleaner, greener, safer. Safety was a really big thing that came out through the First Steps consultation, so we're really keen to reflect it in this framework. And then a culturally rich borough, which is particularly important in light of us being London Borough of Culture next year, and also just having a lot of those kind of creative industries, key venues like the Stadium and Alexandra Palace. And then an inclusive economy as well, making sure that we're creating those employment opportunities and supporting our businesses. And then finally, it's the approach, which is how we're working together across all elements of placemaking. So that includes developers, residents, stakeholders. It's not just the council doing this, it's everyone who's engaged in the process of development should be working collaboratively with various stakeholders, communities, local public authorities to deliver on our kind of aspirations. So I'll briefly touch on the spatial strategy now. The spatial strategy is the kind of overarching approach in directing development in the borough. In the adopted local plan, which is what you see on the page here, growth was predominantly focused in Wood Green and in particular areas in Tottenham, particularly North Tottenham and Tottenham Hale. So what we've done since then is look comprehensively across the borough at areas where there are opportunities for development at a range of scales to be accommodated, but more importantly, where that development and growth can help us achieve some of our placemaking aspirations. And that's led us to this kind of version of the spatial strategy here, which, as you can see, cuts across all different neighbourhoods in the borough. Now, we call these kind of individual areas that you see as placemaking focus areas. So placemaking focus areas are where there are the kind of greatest opportunities to undertake placemaking in the borough, and they're kind of put into two kind of key categories. The first is transform areas, which are areas with the greatest opportunity and areas indeed where we're likely to see the most amount of change in the borough. So examples of that are, for example, the area around North Tottenham, where you've got a lot of development coming around the stadium and also through the planned High Road West redevelopment, or indeed around Wood Green Central, where there for a long period of time there's been aspirations for kind of significant development and growth, or indeed what you've seen around Tottenham Hale as well. Now, enhance areas are what you see kind of in the orange color there, and they're drawn much more broadly. And there's a, they can encompass not just areas where there are kind of pockets of opportunities for development, but also the areas where the, I guess, the investment from that development can be directed towards different infrastructure. So, for example, it might be that a park nearby an area where there's potential for development could benefit from investment from that development, or indeed social infrastructure in the area could benefit, or walking and cycling infrastructure could benefit from development in that area. So enhanced areas are likely to experience more incremental change when compared to transform areas. As I mentioned, we've broken the borough down into 11 different neighbourhood chapters. This was a response to a lot of feedback from First Steps that they wanted kind of more policy and guidance at that kind of more localised neighbourhood scale, where they felt kind of a greater amount of familiarity and yeah, I guess closeness to the areas around them. So the neighbourhood boundaries that you can see on this map have been based on a 2015 characterisation study that was done to inform the current local plan, and is informed by kind of 15-minute city principles. So the idea that you are they're kind of grounded in a town centre at the middle of them, and or stations or things like that. And it's important to note that these neighbourhood boundaries are not new political or statutory boundaries. They're simply a way of breaking up the borough into different kind of components to provide more detailed policy and guidance for those areas. So each neighbourhood chapter is contains its own vision. What you can see there is an example from Tottenham Hale. So that's the Tottenham Hale neighbourhood area. It has its own vision, and it has its own neighbourhood policies or policy, and it identifies these particular placemaking focus areas. So you'll see in Tottenham Hale on the left-hand side there's that kind of transform area around the retail park and Ferry Island to the north and Ashley Road, with surrounding kind of enhanced areas around it. Each placemaking focus area contains its own strategy for development and what we want to achieve in terms of placemaking, as well as specific kind of initiatives that could support those placemaking. It also identifies site allocations within each of those placemaking focus areas. Each site allocation contains a summary of what is proposed for that site. It also includes indicative capacities, and site allocations are an opportunity for us to provide more detailed policy guidance on kind of key sites that will help us to achieve our placemaking aspirations. So the plan also contains a number of thematic chapters. I'm just going to go over each of the chapters really briefly now. Obviously, you can go into detail more on the website as well. So there's a chapter on design with policies aimed to achieve high quality development that positively contributes to the character and amenity of Haringey, and it includes, importantly, a series of design principles that build on an existing design charter that we have. We've got a heritage chapter with policies to conserve the significance of our heritage assets, and that also includes a new kind of Haringey conservation charter. We've got a new chapter on culture now, and that's to support the development of a culturally rich borough. It identifies a number of cultural quarters in the borough and includes policies to safeguard and encourage the provision of culture facilities and support the growth and protection of our creative industries, particularly within the Tottenham Creative Enterprise Zone. We've got a chapter on climate resilience and adaptation to ensure that our communities can adapt to a changing climate, and that includes new policies to support urban cooling, minimise overheating risk. There's building a zero carbon Haringey chapter, setting a clear pathway to achieving zero carbon buildings. A sustainable travel chapter, which includes a healthy streets approach and new walking and cycling policies, as well as clearer requirements around disabled person parking. Green infrastructure chapter, which includes dedicated new trees policies. Housing chapter, which includes policies to maximise the delivery of new homes that are kind of genuinely affordable to the people most in need. Social infrastructure chapter, employment and industry chapter, which seeks to require redevelopment to achieve an uplift in floor space and job potential. And then finally, a town centres chapter, which looks to support and enhance Haringey's town centres and high streets, and contains a healthy town centres policy. So how can you provide your feedback? Well, there are a number of ways. Most of you will be familiar with the website as well. The local plan is such a huge document. We've tried to make it easy by breaking it down into different sections. In each of those sections, you'll find kind of a quick guide of the summary of the chapter, as well as the detailed chapter itself, which you can read before going on to answer questions. For the neighbourhood chapters, in addition to that, you can click on the links to specific site allocations if you want to provide your feedback on those site allocations. You may not have noticed that there's also at the top of your bar on the website, there's a policy map that you can have a look at, which sets out kind of where the different areas of growth are, where our industrial areas are, where our conservation areas are, where the kind of key parks are, all those kind of mapped elements of the plan. There's also a tell us about your neighbourhood section, which isn't strictly about planning policy, but it's a way for us to get an idea of what the key issues for you are in your particular neighbourhood and what your priorities are. And that can inform not only the development of our local plan, but also kind of a wider council placemaking kind of projects and programs. There's also a map where you can provide specific feedback on particular locations where you see particular challenges or opportunities. As I said, you can also email us if you by contacting us at New Haringey Local Plan. Well, actually, I'll get one of my colleagues to put the link in if that's okay to the email address. And then finally, you can join us at one of our many online events or in-person events. We will be adding more in-person events to this calendar over the coming weeks, so please do keep an eye out. At the moment, we've got a number in Wood Green, but we'll be getting more across the borough. All right.